Great. You're in good shape. Okay, we'd like to call to order the Strategic Planning Committee meeting of February 28th. Roll call, Madam Secretary. Let the record show everyone's here this evening except Councilman Aaron Lawler. He had a medical issue with his wife, and so we'll look forward to having him back next time. Everyone please rise. We'll have the invocation and pledge allegiance, the prayer tonight to be led by Councilman Oliver Joseph.
Bow our hand. Dear Lord, bless this great parish, bless this great state. Oh Lord, bless all the members on this committee. Also bless the members of the council. Dear Lord, bless this great state, all the armed forces service members who fight for the freedom that we have today. Dear Lord, bless all. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 3 on our agenda is the public comment period. Anyone that wants to make a comment on items on agenda tonight, come forward and sign in a card, and we'll entertain you at that point. Item number 4 is approval of the February 8th, 2018 Strategic Planning Committee meetings. Do I hear a motion?
Say it again now?
Motion to approve the minute.
Oh,
Yes, I'll make that motion.
second.
Yeah, no problem.
Wake up, committee. I'm not sure of the primary motion. We'll give it to Ms. Casso and a second by Councilman Dawson.
It's been a long week, Doc.
It really has. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, those minutes are accepted. Item number 5 is a discussion of prospective employee residency requirements by Councilman Oliver Joseph. This is a holdover item from last time, as are all the issues on our agenda this evening. So we'll go right away and turn it over to Councilman Joseph.
Where is that?
Doc,
I don't see that. You don't
Doc,
know.
you got the wrong
Oh,
one,
wait.
Doc. That's last month.
I got what the secretaries gave me. I'm going to ditch that. I'm going to go to Novus. I thought we had dispensed with that last
Yeah,
time.
it failed,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it failed. Okay.
Yeah, this is last month's, this is February 28th's agenda.
That must
Okay.
be the minutes.
Yeah. that's-
Did I call the wrong minutes then?
I don't know.
Uh,
Doc, you having a long week too.
I am, but I only have what was placed in front of me.
yeah, you said February 8th. It had to be March.
Yeah,
Doc.
so-
February 8th. You approved the minutes for February 8th.
Okay, we're gonna fix that right now.
Thank you.
Just give me a moment. I'm gonna go by Novus and not what was given to me in a hard copy.
We don't have any minutes to approve tonight.
Yeah, but I do need an agenda. Let's see.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, February 28th.
Did I at least call the correct date of the meeting?
February 28th.
Okay, okay.
Want a hard copy?
Yeah, get
Yeah.
down hard copy.
All right, so we're gonna go back and say, looking for a motion to approve the February 28th, 2018 minutes.
So moved.
So moved by Councilwoman Casso, second by Mr. Joseph. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. The other ones, I guess we've approved twice now. Okay, moving right along. Item number 5 is a discussion of the draft fireworks ordinance. This was going to be led tonight by, originally placed on the agenda by Councilwoman Casso, and then last time we assigned the task of a draft ordinance to Mr. Lawler. Since he's not here tonight, he has asked me, could we defer this? I have agreed to that, and if no one objects to that, we'll just wait till Aaron is with us again at our next meeting, which will be in May. Okay?
Motion, move it, or whatever.
Do
No
we-
objection.
We'll just go ahead and say we have a motion from Mr. Joseph and a second from Mr. Dawson to defer this item until our May meeting. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 4 is deferred to next time. Item number 5, I apologize for that. So our last and only item on the agenda this afternoon, now we'll get it right, is a discussion of changes of the Code of Ordinances under Article 4.
6.
That's a typo, isn't it? 6, under the council procedures, that's Section 2, The discussion this afternoon to be led by Council Chair Bill Dawson. Bill?
Thank you. I didn't really propose any changes to this, but, you know, I think there are some areas here that, you know, could take a little bit of closer scrutiny, if you will. So if we, you know, you just look at, we could, I think, just walk down this, kind of like what we did in the Charter Committee. And, you know, first section, I wouldn't propose, I wouldn't see that we needed to do anything here. It just says what the composition of the governing authority is. And then section 2 is compensation. Again, that's something that comes out of the charter. So, you know, we couldn't, I don't think we could change this unless we changed what was in the charter. The governing authority meetings, again, that's something that comes out of the charter. Election of officers, that's another item that comes out of the charter. And the powers and duties of the chair. You know, this, I think for the most part, comes out of the charter, but I mean, if we wanted to go through this, I think if anybody may, you know, look at this and see whether they see anything here that may need to be further reviewed or changed.
If you allow me to interrupt, Mr. Dawson, so all of these things, from 291 we're up to 295 now in our Muni Code, I agree, are redundant language for the most part in the charter, but that's not to say that they may or may not, in this homeroom charter revision committee that's standing right now, they will consider each and every one of these things or even suggest a change. I do note you have highlighted in yellow. I assume that means that you may be suggesting that we just discuss that or change section number 8 under 295, powers and duties of the chair, where it reads, the chair shall be authorized to assign council members to represent the council on all boards and commission with ratification by the council. I don't know where you're going there, but I've taken the liberty to scroll down the rest of the document where you have similar highlights. And am I to understand that maybe right now we are saying that in one part that in our code that you can't be on any boards, in another part we're actually saying there that you can.
Well, that's part that's exactly one of the questions.
Okay.
And then you also, this is not practice. That's another reason that I put this on here. That, you know, really if they're talking about, you know, this waterway commission and that type of thing, there's not any ratification by the council. In the past, I just appointed these, and that was the procedure.
So those, if I hear you correctly, that is existing wording with ratification by the council.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you considering that, or asking us to consider, maybe we would want to delete that since it's not in practice what's going on.
Well, I think we should consider it, and then I made a note for myself that, you know, it needs to be instituted in the next January, if it's not changed.
Okay. Any committee member wish to speak to this? Ms. Casa.
So, Bill, are you suggesting that the chair should appoint council members to each of these boards? What are your thoughts about that?
No, and one, this is not real clear about this boards and commissions. Mm-hmm. So, excuse me, we do appoint to the boards for the most part with ratification by the council. So if we're appointing to the library board, for example, but I don't, the chair doesn't make those appointments. Those are, you know, made through personnel. So really the only ones that I have done as the chair would be these. I think there's this Bayou, I don't remember all of them, but there's a Waterways Commission. There's about 3 or 4 of these commissions that, Oliver, do you remember what all they are? Anyway, I have in the past just appointed those the same as I appointed the committee chairs, and I've used that in the matrix to what we appointed.
River Region, Quad Area.
Right.
There's more than one.
But they weren't none of that. I didn't bring any of that to the council for ratification.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, wouldn't this language also conflict later on where you have the yellow on item number 4 under section 2, 100?
Yeah, that's one that I have a question about because
Because it says that, let me just read it for the public's benefit, parish council members shall not serve on any parish boards. So if that's the case, and that's under bylaws and operating procedures of the parish council standing committees, then how can we be talking about a ratification or just an appointment process?
But they are not parish board.
Well,
Quiet
in the
area-
strict sense, it's
quiet
not
area
just
is
for
not.
Ascension, that's correct.
Right, quiet area is not an Ascension board. And I'm just gonna use this for example. I was a councilman and I was a, board member on ACUD 1. But the rule said after my term was up on the board, I could not be reappointed or serve on that board. So I understand that concept, but the River Region is not a parish, appointed board. Quiet area, they got one more,
This is
River
water,
Region, something,
this
but,
is Waterways Commission or
right,
something like that.
those are jointly with other parishes, and we have a person on that board. Like the parish president can appoint someone on Lafourche Freshwater District.
Yeah.
Certain things like that, they have that power to do that. That language that still give us that authority to appoint to represent us as a
Now,
councilman
I
on
think
those boards.
the one exception that I can think of is I appoint Terry to the library board. Because that's, you know, that, was it the charter? I can't remember where, it was
But
either the
she's
charter
not-
or through the
you-
bylaws, then was authorized to appoint someone. you
But
know.
is she's a board member or she's advisory?
Well, that's why this language is very confusing.
Well, and also,
Because in one place-
we have people on Ascension Economic Development.
So,
I'm on Ascension Economic Development, Cagnolati.
so should we,
we-
what I'm hearing here, and I don't know if that's the pleasure of this committee, but should we maybe think about a recommendation about defining what a board is as it relates to being an Ascension Parish Board versus an extraneous one, and therefore whether the chair can appoint or whether he can only ratify, only have the council ratify? Or is that going too far? Ms. Casson?
I don't think that's a bad idea, Doc, but I do want to say that I do enjoy my service to the library board, and I think that council members seated on these various boards and commissions can be helpful. Because whether they're ex officio, whatever that we decide here, whatever their role, it has been helpful for me to understand better the workings of the libraries. And I think it is, and certainly to be able to convey that to my fellow councilmen. And-
Yeah.
And it's helpful to them to understand the concerns of the council around taxing authority boards.
Right.
So I think this is a good piece. We just need to figure out exactly what the rules are around it, whether they're voting members, whether they're what their status is, so that we don't have one spot that it says you shall do it, and another spot that says they can't serve on boards and commissions.
Right. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, although I don't know, I wasn't there when it happened. I'm not even sure what came first, the chicken or the egg, and please don't write in on this one. Whether it was the homeroom charter or our Muni codes, or the Muni code, was first and then the homeroom charter copied it, whatever. But under Section 2-100 of the bylaws and operating procedures of the parish council standing committees, number 4, where it says parish council members shall not serve on any boards, we'll go out on a limb and say, they were talking, it says it, parish boards, but they were probably worrying about, in the original spirit of that law, that some of these boards would bring business in front of us, and there'd be conflict of interest because almost like what's the term here, not double jeopardy, but you would be making decisions on that board, and then again, as a council person, all that. But this brings to mind, if my fellow committee members have considered, you can always, if we get rid of that explicitly and say you can serve on them, or just the extraneous boards, period, then there's always the recusal process, where if something, for example, Ms. Casso, if you did something on your library board and they had business in front of us and you felt uncomfortable, having been involved in that activity outside of the parish council, you could recuse yourself. So
Certainly.
I personally don't have a whole lot of problems with this. but it's very strong language to say the parish council members should not serve on any parish boards. And of course, there's no remedy or consequence, and if they are, so what? What's being done
Right.
about it?
And I guess we have to look at each individual board bylaws, because some of these boards was created way before the home rule charter was. And they may say a councilman can do it, and that's a legal issue that we may have to discuss with O'Neill. And may, they change their bylaws or something, so.
Right. I looked at, I'm just thumbed through the charter, and there's not this ancillary statement in the charter. So,
Be specific,
This-
Bill. What do you mean by ancillary
well,
statement?
there's not a statement in the charter that says that that's prohibited, that a council member serve on any parish board. This is just in the ordinance.
A rare occurrence, but that's interesting. I don't know what to say as chair, so what's our pleasure here? I am hearing from Councilman Joseph, maybe we should bring legal in, or Ms.
Mr.
Casso?
Satterley, Mr. Chairman, I thank you. I would like to encourage us to consider that I have found this very helpful to me. And I believe that if other boards had a single council member on them, it would be helpful to them. And subsequently, through that, to my fellow council members or their fellow council members and to the boards. So I'm not sure that we shouldn't just leave this and strike that other language.
So if I'm hearing you suggesting perhaps that section 2-100.4 maybe should be stricken from the Muni Code, and as Councilman Dawson says, it's not mentioned in our homeroom charter anyway, and therefore the operative piece here would go back up to what we're really on right now, which is the
295.
295 powers and duties of the chair, .8.
0.8.
Where we're talking about ratification by the council of assigned council members to represent council on a board or a commission. Is that?
I think that's fair, and I think if a council member has a particular interest in an area or a particular
Right.
expertise, that might be a great spot for them to offer to serve and have the chair
and there's
authorize
recusal,
them.
and there's
then
also-
if there's a conflict, certainly recuse if needed.
And then we leave in here this ratification by the council, so that would have some controls on it. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So is it a suggestion, or is it going to be in the form of a motion?
Well, I thought we'd talk it out a little bit, and if everybody's comfortable with that, I'm happy to make it in the form of a motion.
I'm gonna go back to the legal.
Okay, so
I mean, I just.
we have some,
Need to.
and that's
We need to
good.
check. We need
Yeah.
to verify
Yeah.
with it.
I think, I have no
feel
problem with,
comfortable with legal, because he might go in some other rules and laws that we might not be aware of
Right.
right now.
Correct.
so why don't we do this? Let's let the minutes reflect, Madam Secretary, when you review this video, that this committee has decided that we would like to check with legal counsel, with Mr. Parrington, about the conflict between Section 2-100, Subpart 4, and that of Section 95.
95. So part 8.
.8, and see what he has to say. He can look at the video as well and see what discussion we've had and what our concerns are. And with that, if everybody's happy, we can go back to Councilman Dawson and pick up with 296 maybe? Or is there other things, I'm not trying to hurry this, on the powers and duties of the chair. This is not intended necessarily just to be the Bill Dawson dog and pony show here tonight. I'm sure you'd agree with that. So if you've got any problems with 1 through 8, we need to entertain that now before moving down. Everybody want a minute to kind of study that, if you haven't done so already? Basically, language there, while folks are looking, is it just says that the chair is going to preserve order and decorum in our meetings. I'm pretty sure we wouldn't want to fool with that. There is one issue, by the way, I would have on the number 2. This would be me. The chair shall decide all questions on order subject to the appeal of the council. The parliamentarian may render an opinion on parliamentary procedures only at the request of the chair. However, the chair shall not be bound on such opinion. I like the rule I just question, who is this parliamentarian person? I've been serving 6 years. I don't mean to be flippant here, but I've never seen that individual in person or in training or anything. So when the chair of, and as a chairman myself of this committee, has an issue, who do we turn to for a decision? As it sits, the chair is not bound by it, but there is no other person to even guide you, which makes the onus of being intimately familiar, all chairs for the full council and all standing committees, familiarity with Robert's Rules of Order.
So there is, I mean, obviously, we don't have a parliamentarian.
Historically, did we have one at one time, or?
I don't recall one,
We
sir.
never had one, but we tried getting training for it, and it was hard to even find one.
Exactly.
I know we've had training since I've served, but we've never had an individual in that position.
It's so hard to find one, Doc.
But as far as this particular, actually, Robert's Rules of Order has a procedure here. If somebody calls a point of order, the chair can make a ruling on it. Then the committee can, if they can get a motion and a second, then the committee can vote whether to override that ruling of the chair. So there is that, the appeal process is with the committee, or the council in our case.
So, are you saying, Bill, that you don't think we need to change anything here and just leave the?
Well, I mean, if we, we wanted the parliamentarian, I don't know we'll ever have one. We've never had one. It might be if we wanted to just say, parliamentarian. Really, I don't think
I mean, if you took
Yeah.
the second sentence out and just coupled the other two somehow, it would say the chair shall decide all questions of order subject to appeal to the council. However,
that's
the
really.
chair is not bound by,
Well, I would say leave that, you could take both of those sentences out and just say the chair shall decide all questions of order subject to the appeal of the council, which that's the Robert's Rules of Order.
Or
Yep.
you can add Robert Rules of Order in there.
well, I think
Slash.
that's an interesting point, Mr. Joseph, because we have that in our bylaws, that we
Right.
are to follow Robert's Rules of Order, but correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen and lady, I don't believe we have that either in the Muni Code or in the homeroom charter that we
I don't-
abide by
I don't
Robert's
know
Rules
that
of
it
Order?
It's a good catch here, we can add it.
Maybe dissolution of that,
Slash parliamentary slash
yeah,
Robert Rules of Order.
that second sentence to get rid of the parliamentarian, but just say that the chair shall decide, or the chair shall decide all questions of order, using Robert's Rules of Order as subject to appeal. I don't know how to, I really
Well,
don't know.
I would recommend maybe we go to section 293 and just add C in there that says, there's a statement in Robert's Rules of Order, they have a canned
Correct.
statement that we can use here.
Right. All right, so we back up to 293, and it currently, for everybody's benefit at home, it has subsections A and B. It's being suggested now that perhaps we would add C, and that's a point of reference to that this council will follow Robert's Rules of Order, as is stated in our bylaws.
I'll come back with that language.
Okay, so if everybody's comfortable, we'll let Councilman Dawson check with that and everything and make it consistent with all the things we've just talked about and maybe add it. And if it's there, then we can go back, as Part C, we can go back then and look at the language under 295-2 and likely be able to get rid of the parliamentarian sentence.
Yeah.
That has that word in it as well as parliamentary procedures twice. And we will let you take a look at that as well, Bill, and suggest some
Yeah,
language for
I'll
next
come
time.
back.
Okay. I didn't mean to surprise you with that. I would have got to you earlier, but I wasn't quite sure where you were going with the entire section. But it's often vexed me, that we talk about a parliamentarian and that we don't have a warm body in a seat. So, okay, so let's look down. So then from there we've got.
As Oliver said, those people are they're rare as hen's teeth, if you can understand.
There we go with the poultry jokes again. Number 3, in the vice
You
chair's
started it.
in the vice chair's absence, the chair may substitute any member of the council to perform the duties of the chair. I personally have no problem with that. Anybody?
No.
Number 4, when the council shall be ready to go to a committee of the whole, And we've just had experience with this with the vetting of the ABA proposal of the parish manager system. So we know that that's a reality, committee of the whole. He, meaning the chair, shall preside therein, or he can name the chair from the body, an individual to preside therein, which Councilman Dawson did recently when he made Travis Turner chair of the committee of the whole. So that's operative and useful, and anybody wanted any changes or anything there?
No, I
Here.
just, I mean, maybe a little bit of background here is that really this and Robert's Rules of Order, the committee of the whole is something that's always available. It's a
Right.
standing committee that's always available to the council and the.
And we
And
kind of
the
have
chair.
that, don't we, Bill, with the finance committee and,
Yes.
Yeah.
well, actually, drainage is probably not a committee of the whole because it's a whole separate, when we service commissioners. Good way to really learn about that from the public is you notice the placards in front of us have our names and our districts and our titles as councilmen. When we sit in the drainage commission, we are now commissioners of the East Ascension Gravity District, so that's quite different. Let's see. We are now looking at, lost my place here. We're still in 295? Yep. When the council shall be ready to go into the committee, we just did that. Number 5, the chair shall be a member ex officio of all committees and shall have the right to notice of all meetings thereof and to vote on all provisions before any such boards and committees. And in his absence, the vice chair shall serve. And that's where I originally was going. And when Bill correctly corrected me, and when I was looking at the homeroom charter about whether the president had, and that was something, of course, that came from the RPEC, doing the ABA vetting process, the right to discuss, motion, and vote. So this is where it really talks about that in our Muni Code. Everybody comfortable with that, or do we
Yes.
need any nudging there? I bet, I'll speak as a chair, I like it. I think he should be an ex officio, and if you really look that word up, the word alone says he can motion, discuss, and vote. Although I know Mr. Dawson's uncomfortable with a whole lot of discussion. He just likes to vote and make motion, he told me. But the power's there, is the point being in number 5. Number 6, the chair shall assign all members of the council to their respective committees and follow input by the members. I think that's being done.
I might just add one thought here is that, it really should be the chair and the vice chair or with input from the vice chair.
I would have no problem with that. And that is actually being done right now, although that is a unique, it wasn't done, I've been here 6 years, it wasn't done through 2 chairs I sat with, but with the current chair and vice chair, it is being done. I like it. Ms. Casso, you comfortable with that?
I would be comfortable with that.
Can we go as far as a motion here, or do we want to keep all the topics tonight into
To
a
Bill,
package
And then
deferred
Bill
next?
come back with,
Okay, so we're going to charge you again, Mr. Dawson, if you don't mind,
I'll
to
make
to insert some language about the vice chair. We'll give input to the chair in making these decisions. Number 7, chair shall represent the council in public functions, ceremonies, and events, or assign this responsibility to, I assume, another council member or whatever. It's wide open there. I, again, have no problem with that. Looking left and right, no problem. Number 8, the chair shall be authorized to assign the council members to represent the council on all boards and commission. And that's what we had, gave this whole
Already
discussion
did,
this section with the
yeah.
ratification of the council, so we've already handled that. Bill, take it away at 296.
Well, I mean, that's quorum. I don't see any changes there.
Anybody?
that rule had been there for.
297. For the benefit of the audience at home, 297 is order of business at our regular meetings. It is a listing starting with our traditional roll call, call to order and calling of the roll, a pledge and invocation, public comment period, followed by the president's report, consent agenda, where I think Mr. Dawson, but based on some hand notes here, is going to have something to say. If not, I do. Ceremonial presentations, council announcements is number 7, committee reports, ordinances for final adoption and an introduction of new ordinances, announcement of vacancies on boards and commissions, appointments of council members and parish president, any other direct appointment authority, executive sessions if we have one. And chair's additions is interestingly way down at 13. I'm not sure if it's in the right spot, but take it away, Mr. Dawson.
Well, I mean, we don't follow this to the letter. So, what I would say is if you looked at 297 and you have those brackets down below and it says the following order of business shall be observed at the regular meetings, I think it needs to be some leeway there. I think we need to give some room for changing that.
I would agree, because if we're not doing it, the word
Yeah.
shall is a red herring.
Maybe should.
The following order of business,
Wondering as I
May.
said it, whether that's different or not.
not even sure should, but the following order of business
May.
Yeah, may.
or an example of our order of business follows, or
Maybe that's where we need to go, something like this.
Something like that.
Yeah,
why don't we let you work on that as well, Bill, if you don't mind?
okay.
Is that
You and O'Neill get together with that, Bill.
right?
He's got.
And so I'm not going to read them all out again, but you had highlighted, and that's a change I know you guys have made. I very much appreciate it and like it, and that is the Christmas-colored red and green sign-up cards, if you're for or against something. But under Part 3, Public Comment Period A, it references, and I'll read that out loud, the sign-up card will be referred to as the public speaker card, and I believe that's because under B, the beginning of that sentence starts with public speaker card, so it's just a synonym name, I guess. To be available at the door of the meeting room, that's not so. It's up here on the podium right now. And to be filled out prior to the beginning of the meeting and no later than 2 minutes after the announcement of the agenda of the public comment period. Bill?
Well, I mean, you caught that as not available at the door, which I'm not sure that maybe it should say something like needs to be readily available, or something like that, and necessarily, I think, need to be at the door, in my opinion.
Accessible to the public.
Yeah. Readily accessible. I think OJ's got a good idea, to the public without specifying where.
Then it's no later than 2 minutes, okay, so we violate that
A lot. And that's why we're here,
fairly
folks.
often.
We're making light of this, but we're trying very hard. I want you to know, as your elected officials, to try to adhere to what it says that we're supposed to do. Or, I think it's the mission of this, and we're going to get to that in a minute, what our mission really is in strategic planning, to alter it to fit what we're really doing and what is best and workable.
I would like to, but before that, though, I think there needs to be a reference to the open meetings law. So that somewhere in this section, there needs to be something that says, when there's a conflict, it must be in compliance with the open meetings law, which the open meetings law does talk about public comment, but it's not as specific as this.
So what we would do is bump A, B, and C down and make A, B, B, C, and C, D, and insert at A reference to open meetings law.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
I like that because you're fixing to get, and without jumping ahead too far, a bunch of open meetings law questions that you have at 298 and on other spots in this. What do you think, group?
I agree.
Okay. So we're going to have Bill work on this, on the language on easily acceptable, a la Oliver Joseph, the cards, as well as insertion of some language, getting again with legal on open meetings law, so that the people understand that we want that to trump anything. It's not our intention ever to violate, if at all possible, open meetings law, and we're going to get into that in a minute. The timing of how that's done as it relates to advertisement to the public, and last minute changes to our agenda and things of this nature. What about the 2 minutes, Mr. Dawson?
Listen to the pleasure of the committee.
Originally,
Mr. Joseph.
I mean, just because you're saying this here, I really didn't realize it was 2 minutes, because a couple of years ago, it was almost like 5 minutes. We would let someone talk, and it didn't have a time limit, and then we, under Bell, we changed it to 3 minutes.
No,
Oh, no,
just 2 minutes.
This is how long you have to sign up a card, not how long you have to speak.
Right, there's within 2 minutes of
Hey,
the announcement.
What it addresses is when the public comment period is closed without it officially being stated, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, by the chairman that it's
Right.
closed. And in fact, some of our committees operate stating that, some of them don't. I noticed, for
Right.
example,
It just,
planning and zoning is very formal about it. When they say it's closed, it's closed. We, on the other hand, I've seen people speak well after this decision is made. I hate to put all this on the record, but The truth will set you free, John 8:32, huh? So is 2 minutes reasonable, and do we start adhering to it, or do we allow? To me, that what that says is someone's up there speaking, and the public meeting content has been opened, okay? And
When
that person has 3 minutes, so 2 minutes into their speaking, if you want to speak, you'll have to have signed up a card.
No, that's not the way I interpret it.
No? What does it say?
So the announcement, after the announcement on the agenda, so, you know, you got public comment, that's an agenda
Got 2
item.
minutes.
Oh, so if that's announced at
After that
the,
agenda item comes up, then, see, public comment, well, that's the agenda item number 3, so the
are you
chair
talking,
said-
yeah, but, I'm sorry, are you talking
But-
about announcement of the public comment period
Yeah,
at the very
well, 2
beginning of
minutes
the
after
meeting?
that, then there's no
Yeah.
more cards accepted.
That's right.
But
Not
you-
when you get to the item.
Not when you get to the item, you're talking
Right.
about the beginning of the meeting.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
Okay.
what this says to me.
So if you had a 23-item agenda like we had in Terry's committee, Finance, earlier this week, and she says when appropriate items come up, sign your thing, maybe we should admonish all our chairs to state that, you need to do that right now, and you got 2 minutes from me saying this. Because if you come up later in the meeting, we're not going to allow it. In which case, this language is fine, if it's understood to be that way. See, I was wondering,
When you get to the topic.
when you get to the topic versus at the beginning of the meeting,
It's at the beginning of, that's
you think that's implied here? Well, it says it prior
Yeah.
to the beginning of the meeting. Prior to the beginning of the meeting,
And
it's
I
be
guess
filled out.
that's why it's at the front of the door, so when you walk in, you see, if you have any public comment, it should be stated at the front of the public comments card.
So when the full chairman of the council or any committee member states, as I did earlier in this agenda, that, if you have anything to say to public comment period, at the time of that statement,
2 minutes.
public members have 2 minutes to come and fill out a card. So
Or when they walk
that
through
we
the
get to
door.
the item and someone comes up to here from the secretary, whatever, and hands me the card or any, we won't take it.
That's it.
Ms. Gaza, do we want to be that strict?
I believe that it is important that the public have an opportunity to speak at meetings. I don't necessarily think that forcing people to come at the onset of an agenda item, at the onset of an agenda, beginning of a meeting, to collect a red or a green card, and then sit through 23 items on the agenda when their item, and they have reviewed it, might be number 23. However, I do find it disconcerting sometimes that there's all that activity going on in the front of the dais, and cards coming over, and it can be, I've sat in a chair a long time, it can be a disconcerting thing. So there must be some reasonable way that we can not totally limit that and yet have some better controls. Would anyone like to offer a suggestion? I'm thinking that once people have begun to speak, that might be the point in time on an agenda item, that people shouldn't be walking up and getting cards when someone else is speaking. That's not only rude, it causes a lot of confusion. So is there a happy medium here? And I'm just
I'm
asking.
I'm gonna go back with the original. If we put something outside the door with the cards on it and with the agenda item, they can fill them out there. And when they walk through the door, they can bring them up to send them. You're still giving them that access, but they still won't have to come up when the speaker is coming up. They can walk to the side to give the card, and that goes in front of the speaker. I mean,
I think that would be helpful, OJ, but I'm listening to what Terry had to say, and so I jotted a few notes down. And here would be a scenario. Our meeting starts at 6 o'clock. And let's just say it started promptly. And we also have issues there where we have multiple meetings, and it says it starts at 6, or to immediately follow the other meeting when you don't know when it is, so you don't know when it starts. So people are trying to time getting off of work and come here, let's say they want to speak. And we have a lengthy agenda, let's say 25 items or so. So at 6:05, or probably right around that area after the invocation and pledge occurs and so forth, and the roll call is made, the chairperson is going to say the little formula about public comment. And if that 2 minutes goes from there, it's now 6:07, but let's say you wanted to speak on item number 21, and you don't believe it's going to occur for at least a half an hour, 45 minutes. So you don't even get into this courtroom to, I don't know, 6:30, 6:45, whatever. You take your chance. But now you're not going to be allowed to speak? I agree with Terry, problem with that. I think within reason, we need to be encouraging and not discouraging public speaking. Emphasis on within reason. I, too, do not like, as we had earlier this week, 5 hours of meetings, but sometimes I guess it's necessary. But I feel sorry. I can think of one individual that sat through a whole meeting before the meeting that individual wanted to speak at, just to be sure that maybe the 25-item agenda was quicker than thought or whatever. And then the second meeting had 12 items on it. And I'd hate to think that, if that individual tried to time it and didn't make these strict rules about 2 minutes and so forth, that they wouldn't be allowed to speak. Mr. Dawson, please.
I think, one of the things that may be trying to prevent here is this continual back and forth of somebody gets up and they say something, and then that, somebody in the audience says, "Oh, okay, I'm going to come fill a card," and then somebody over here says, "Well, I'm going to go fill." That's not what the intention of this is. So, I think that perhaps leaving it open to the agenda item, but once the public speaking is started on an agenda item, the collection of the cards on that item should stop.
So would that be moving it from the beginning, though, to the item, or are you?
Well, I think in the public comment period, we can just say, you can comment on any, item. We'd appreciate it if you bring the cards up early, but there will be limited time, at the agenda item for you to bring a card, something to that
once the
effect.
public speaking has started on that agenda item,
There'll be
no more cards accepted.
That's right.
That makes good sense to me.
Yeah, we'll just have to author a little consistent message until everybody kind of gets used to that.
Right.
But it sounds like we all agree now that the current language under 3A is not appropriate, not only for what's happening in reality, but what we would like to see happen.
Yes.
So I hate to be putting all of these burdens on you, Mr. Dawson.
You have to
Dawson.
learn somebody else's name.
Well,
Mr. Dawson loves to talk.
That'd be,
That's his topic.
I promise not to make another chicken.
one thing's for sure, I'm gonna be very kind on you later on when we get to the fact that Strategic Planning doesn't even have a mission statement because of your willingness to take all this on. But if you are willing again,
I got
you
that.
got it. Okay. Again, folks out there, if you're listening, we're trying to make this as workable and as efficient and fair to both the council and the people that we serve as possible. Bear with us, a lot of this language is it fair to say ancient? It might have been working for a while or whatever, but we're a big parish now, and some of these things they do need address. And now, personally, I will go on record to say I'm glad that it wasn't the one thing that I saw in that whole section that might need address, as Councilman Dawson saw it, and I find myself as I'm going through it, there's a whole lot of things we need addressed because we're just not doing things that way. B is the public speaker card will contain an item number speaker wishes to speak on. We still have that. And the speaker will be called up upon to speak at the beginning of that specified item. So whatever language Bill's going to work on that, some of that may change as it relates to time of the item versus the beginning of the meeting. Time allotted will be 3 minutes. I don't have any problem with that. But at the discretion of the chairman, this has been controversial, so it merits some discussion tonight, I think. Folks could be allowed additional time if the speaker is speaking for more than himself. That, by the way, in itself is sexist, himself or herself, and has identified so on his, there it is again, speaker card, his or her speaker card. Those might sound minutia, but it's 2018, gentlemen and lady. I see I get a nod from Ms. Castle on that one. So, Bill, do you want to start discussion here?
I think that this was put in, and it was my appreciation that this was changed in another document that we have, and I don't have it in front of me, but maybe in the bylaws, where it used to be that they could allocate their time to somebody else, but that was changed.
Right.
So, you know, really, I'm of the inclination to say 3 minutes and where that, replace that comma with a period.
Likewise.
We agreeable.
Do you want that one as formal as a motion right now, or you want to study this further?
Well, I'll bring that back. I mean, I'll just strike through and bring that back.
And we'll have it as part of the overall discussion
Yeah.
next time. I want to think about that. I may very well be in support of all three of you guys that spoke this evening about it, because it's actually caused, in my own experience, controversy between me and a fellow committee member that serves on this committee. You know, when we took up, before the committee of whole was established, we had the agenda out there for the vetting of ABA. And because of what I could read in the bylaws and here, it allowed the discretion of the chairman to change that. In fact, this doesn't even say how long, it just says additional time. And we got into battles. Should that additional time be 5 minutes? Should it be 10 minutes? And then, you know, and I know the Homeroom Charter Revision Committee is just talking about this right now. I mean, what constitutes a group? And how are you sure you could, you know, is a group a president of a property owners association or his designee? Is it a Facebook group? Is it a, I don't know. So, Bill, again, more comments?
Just
Ms.
an
Gasso?
observation on that. I have a problem with the idea that a group, speaking in a public speaking position, I don't have an issue with a group having longer time in a presentation that is on the agenda. But if a group is being represented by someone and they are speaking as a public speaker in a meeting, after or before an item, then I take issue with them speaking longer than 3 minutes. I think, and I certainly think that if they were to be afforded any longer, then they would need to have to be, they'd have to present the minutes of the meeting that made them the speaker for the group, and that the group agreed. I mean, if you're going to be the group, if you're going to represent the group, then you need to have the consent of the group.
The credentials and the
And
consent.
the credentials likewise. So a copy of the minutes would be necessary for me, if I were the chairman, to say, okay, you're in this scenario, you're entitled, if we had decided to give them longer, you're entitled to longer because you're representing a group. But here are the minutes that say that the position you're about to take does, in fact, represent the position of the group. But that has not been the case. And so I really think it cleans this up
Right.
and prevents extra secretarial type duties like accumulation of minutes and vetting of who's a group and what's not a group. If we just say everybody's equal, you've got 3 minutes.
And thank you, Ms. Castle, for that. And like I said, I may wind up just going with that too, because a parallel thing I think is happened just last Monday, again at the Homeroom Charter Revision Committee meeting, where it got into, and I know, ma'am, you were a little bit tardy there, and so by not being there, they saddled you and the rest of leadership there to decide how long can an expert testify and who is an expert and so forth. So under C here, in this Muni code that guides our council, it kind of puts the chairman in that bond, deciding, you know, are you credentialed, are you appropriate, and then open-ended. I mean, the HRC committee argued on what the time should be. I believe y'all settled on 30 minutes or something, which it reminds me too of when we had the parliamentary training. Robert's Rules of Order, again, it's guiding all of this, says that a councilman has 5 minutes and then 5 minutes in rebuttal. And I remember the young lady instructing us said that's a whole lot. Actually, it's 10 and 10. Is that correct, Bill? It's 10 and 10. But can you imagine if we have 11 councilmen up here took 10 and 10 at 20 on one item, 20 times 11, somebody help me with the math real quick, that's 220 minutes divided by 60, Bill, is
About 4 hours almost.
on one item. And now we got,
Tuesday night meeting.
yeah, we and now we got 20-something items, and, you know, you can do the math. So maybe time allotted will be 3 minutes with a period. It'll also, by the way, it'll also get rid of the sexism comments that are in the rest of that sentence.
There
But
you go.
Bill, it's
I have one more.
One more comment, and then it's going to move
Yeah,
on
I
and be
mean,
on your
as,
plate.
as I'm listening to the comment on this, and I'm wondering whether, you know, we're being prejudicial there in the sense that if somebody represents 3 or 4 people, then we're gonna give them 10 minutes. If somebody represents a group, we're gonna give them 20 minutes or 10 minutes. But an individual comes up here, they only get 3 minutes. So I would worry about the equality of this. And also, again, and maybe I'll run this by Mr. Parrington, because, you know, the open meetings law, you know, dictates something here. It doesn't dictate a time, but it does talk about, it talks about the public comment period. So, you know, I'm not sure whether we could go and allocate 10 minutes to somebody that represents a group versus somebody that just walks up there honestly. But I'll check it.
Yep, I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. My bride just texted me and said, "So much for a short meeting." How ironic, but that's exactly, if you watch it out there, baby, what we're talking about. I'm trying, and maybe I just
Well,
ought to,
we could go to.
maybe I ought to agree with the 3 minutes right there, just move on. Parish President's report, any problems there? I think it's important that he has a report, or given an opportunity, even if he doesn't have one, to give one. Number 5, consent agenda, and I see, Bill, you've typed in, or written in red, unanimous from committees. It says the council has established this section of the agenda to expedite council meetings by including various categories of routine resolutions, which the council generally adopts in a single motion. The council practice allows any council member to remove any resolution on the consent agenda. I think we're practicing that. Customarily, prior to entertaining a motion to approve the resolutions on the consent agenda, the council chairman will ask the council members to identify any resolutions which they wish to remove from the consent agenda for separate consideration. I think we're doing that. I don't know what you mean by that, but I would think that means that if it comes out of a committee and it comes out with unanimous, let's say 5-0 vote to recommend something to the council, then it's automatically placed on the consent agenda, Bill?
Well, that's the practice. That's the current practice. So I would, you know, I was thinking that maybe somewhere around this routine, you would put that in parentheses. And then I think I would also strike this customarily, because that is a requirement of the open meetings law, that the chair give somebody an opportunity, give all the council members an opportunity to remove from the consent.
Yeah, I think stronger language there would be good, so I would support removal of customary, and I like the idea of it being unanimous. So what it would mean is if something came out of committee 4-1 or I don't know, 3-2 or whatever, even though it's still a recommendation, it wouldn't go on the consent agenda. It would be listed as a regular item.
Well, that's the current practice.
Right. Okay. Anyone else want to come in?
I thought I
Okay.
like the current practice.
My phone just buzzed, so she's probably telling
She's
me.
not giving up, though.
Ceremonial presentations is 6, recognitions and proclamations. I don't know if anybody wants to touch this. I know a lot of people in the public feel like that we shouldn't do that. That should be done privately, because I've been to meetings where you might be given enough presentations to where the meeting is an hour long, but 45 minutes of it is presentations. But I'm not going to be the one that sounds the death knell on that. But I think legitimately, this committee has never been timid to discuss anything, and I like that. So, gentlemen and lady, ceremonial presentations, status quo, changes.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the administration or the council to recognize people in our community who are worthy of such, and so I would, and I think everybody I see come here for that enjoys it. I think it's a wonderful thing we do, and while sometimes I wish that they were not so many in one night, it just is what it is. Wonderful, we have lots of wonderful people in our parish.
Anyone else?
I'm on board with that.
I'm with Terry.
Okay, so we're not giving you any homework assignment there, Bill.
Thank you.
Number 8, ordinances for final adoption. I think that's absolutely what we're doing and necessary. Introduction of ordinances is 9. We do that. 10, announcements of vacancies on boards and commissions. We do that and always go through our personnel committee on that. Appointments by council member or members and/or parish president and/or any other direct appointment authority. I think we're doing that well. Executive sessions when the need be. Chair's additions at the end. I don't know, Bill. Is that
Right now, we put that at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Move it up.
Because that's really,
So when you bring us
that's
back
really where it needs to
an
go.
altered document or edited document next time, you're gonna move that up in the queue
Right,
somewhere under
right.
under this section. And here comes the open meetings can of worms. I noticed you didn't use yellow, you used orange on this. I don't know what that means, it's
I
a
don't
bigger
know if
issue.
that have any significance.
Your yellow pen ran out of ink. Any emergency 2/3, it says, in parentheses, 2/3, close, agenda item shall be put in writing and forwarded to the chair before the meeting begins, in parentheses, with a deadline of 1 PM on a meeting day, and you've written open meetings laws, and it's going to relate to section 298 immediately after that, and I agree. It seems to me that that sentence, if it were being followed, and I'm not sure it is, would be in violation of open meetings law.
Yeah, so the open meetings law, now you have to have 100% to change the agenda within 24 hours. So
So you opted maybe
Within-
to strike that?
I think this needs to be corrected
Or
to
corrected.
reflect the, and
The-
then there
the
needs
state
to
law.
be a reference saying, or in compliance with the open meetings law. I will
Okay.
state what it is.
Well,
and
we'll
then-
look forward to, unless the committee feels otherwise, you bringing us adaptive language
Yeah.
there as well. 298, altering the usual order of business to chair and on his or her, we got rid of the Terry, her part, own volition, upon the majority vote of the council may alter the usual order of business and take any matter out of order, and you put open meetings law question mark again.
I'm not sure, honestly, I can't find anything here that says that's required of the open meetings law, but, I think that, the chair probably shouldn't be able to do this on his or her own, that there should be at least a vote by the council or the committee when you change the order of business, because it can have an effect. For example, I know for the long agenda items, I've told people if they want to come comment, to that, don't come till 7:30 or don't come till 7 o'clock or something like that. And then if one person can change that, move it up to the front of the agenda, it could affect their ability to comment.
That was going to be my comment, so you took the fire there. We just had a lengthy discussion about when can the person speak, beginning of the meeting or the end. If we go monkeying around with the order, and the person was counting on something, it didn't happen, they had no idea of knowing other than it was public advertised to them when it might be the best time for them to get there, and they all, like us, most of us, except myself, work. I am retired. So
I would
Well,
just say
let
strike
me-
this of his or her own volition, and then you could leave the rest.
Okay, we look forward to you bringing that language back to us as well. Section 299, agenda item submittal. All items submitted on the agenda for the parish council meeting shall be submitted to the parish secretary in accordance with the timelines established by the council. For the matter to be placed on the council agenda, it must be authorized or sponsored by a parish committee member, the parish president, or chief administrative officer and/or the council chair. You don't have anything there, but I do.
Yeah, now, remember, the reason I didn't put anything here is because this is submittal. It doesn't say approved, it says
Okay.
submitted.
Okay. Well, you know what I'm going to say then. I mean, I understand that. I have had problems in the past, not with the current chairman, I don't hesitate to add that, but with previous chairpersons, with the issue of both here and in our bylaws of placing and setting things on the agenda as it relates to what are the rights of a council member. Here it says, for a matter to be placed on the council agenda must be sponsored by a parish council member. My little interpretation is I have a right to place things on the agenda. But of course, if submit the same and make that request, but if in the bylaws it says later on, the chairman sets the agenda, if he decides not to set what I've asked to be placed on the agenda, it doesn't go there. And I won't go into the examples of how it's happened to me personally, but I would really like to see us change that. Ms. Gasso, I know you've had the issue yourself because you've emailed me about it, so maybe you would want to begin the discussion this evening?
Well, in some ways I agree with you, Doc, in other ways I don't. So I will tell you how I don't agree.
Tell me how you agree. I prefer it.
I don't remember. I do believe that the chair should set the agenda. I do not want to see items presented over and over and over again by a member who just has an agenda, who just has something they're driving, who just wants to make everybody have to labor or belabor an issue every agenda, every meeting. I just think that is not productive use of our time. So I like the idea that the chairman has some discretion in what is on the agenda. However, I think that the chairman should be, obviously the chairman is generally well respected by the group or would not be the chair. And so that chairman should be inclined to put members' issues on the agenda unless it is something that is just belaboring a point. And I think that's what Bill has done. There's no doubt about that. And I think that we need some recourse if an item is not being put on the agenda. I don't know how you would get that. I think that's something we could discuss here. If the chairman is just being obstinate, refusing to discuss an issue, then I think that there should be some recourse for a councilman who's being thwarted in his or her effort to get something onto the agenda.
Having heard you speak now, I don't find myself too far away from what you said, Terry, on this place versus set issue. I too am against repetitive placing. I mean, that's just being stubborn. But I would like to see your ability to at least place it the first time, and have it discussed, and so it's either considered and defeated or even approved. And the reason I feel strongly about that is that we are all elected. Each and every one of us worked hard to achieve the position and status we are when we are the duly elected representatives of each of the 11 districts in Ascension Parish. So to do that, I believe it's important that we have the councilman, as it states in there, being allowed to place things on the agenda because that's the way in which you represent your voters. It does me little good to even have a political, and I'm emphasis on that, my Facebook page is not social in any stretch of the imagination, page, and to poll my people and all and ask them what they're thinking, and hundreds of them tell me, I'll give you an example that's going on right now. I think we should abolish the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, whether that's a good idea or not, without a discussion, I guess we won't even ever know. But if I asked to place that agenda and the chairman didn't want to do that, then I can't really represent my voters. In fact, as of this afternoon, that's a poll I put out about a week ago. It's running 132 to 2 for abolition. So again, I too am against repetitive placing and the stubbornness that could produce, but I still think it should be your right to put things on the agenda because all the chairman is, in my mind, and when I say all there is, the chairman's a position that it's just it's fraught with all kinds of responsibilities and stuff, but is to conduct our meetings and so forth and so on in a fair manner and that kind of stuff. And I don't know how it would be fair if he or she were just to refuse placement of something that, it's reasonable to be discussing on the get-go. But Bill, you've been noticeably silent.
I've been patient. I had my hand up.
Okay.
I think number one, that this is the section that we're talking about. The section we're talking about is submittal. So there's not I don't think there's an issue here as far as submittal because any council member can submit. Now, does it make it through this section 2-102? Which is where it says the chair and the parish president shall propose the agenda to be completed by Thursday prior to the next meeting.
That's the place and set. Yeah.
That's the place and set. Now, I think that there should be at least 2 council members. So if you don't have enough to make to second a motion, then I don't think it's in the best interest of the council. So
I have no problem with that. So
so I'm just saying there should be at least 2, that sign off on it. And, you know, I guess whether we think there should be more than two, but I wouldn't recommend it for, or my thoughts are it shouldn't be just a single council person.
Mr. Chairman, I find wisdom in your words, and I'll say this, I've looked at other parishes, and that's exactly what they do. The threshold may vary, but they do allow every council member in those that have a homeroom charter system, or even the old police juries, to say, okay, 2, 3, whatever the number is, and yeah, you can get it put on there. But Mr. Joseph?
So what you're saying, I just need to have two, myself and someone else to sponsor that submittal?
I'm
Yes.
saying that's the minimum, you know, I would rather see 3, but, you know, I think it should be, I don't think it should be 1.
So in other words, for both of y'all, in parentheses, if you had whatever the threshold number that we put into the code, then it would go on, and in parentheses, it would have Joseph and Casso,
Correct.
or Dawson and Sadler,
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can live with that. I can
I like that
always
too.
try to get me a sponsor on
Bill,
whatever I want on
you
the
just
agenda.
came up with a solution and another homework assignment. Moving right along, my phone hasn't buzzed in the last 5 minutes, but I'm working on it. We're on page, by the way, 4 of 7. Now, there's nothing says, by the way, if we get
I'm
along
gonna
to.
do this to 102.
Right, exactly, I'm sorry. So if we don't have to finish this tonight, but if
Yeah, that's
if
right.
y'all
I
ready to
would-
go home, we can pick
Ready
it
to
up
go
where we
home,
left
then.
off last time.
I'll move
But I'd
we
have to have a
recess.
motion on that.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
And- and-
I've
and
got
so the-
bronchitis and I'm worn out.
I'm going to accept that motion from Mr. Dawson, and second by Councilwoman Casso. Y'all help the chair here, and so we'll pick up next time at, where are we, Bill?
We're at,
299.
We haven't defined the committees yet. That's when I'm going to get my
299.
agenda, 299, for the
299.
record, Madam Secretary, place on the agenda next time, continuation of discussion of Section 2 of the municipal codes at Section 2-100, which is bylaws and operating procedures of the parish council standing committees. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, we will defer this matter to next time, beginning with Section 2-100. The chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
It's
Second.
moved by Councilman Dawson, second by Councilwoman Casso, that we adjourn. This meeting is adjourned.